I would say to anybody out there, if there's something that you think is too hard for you to do, you got to do it in bite-sized chunks. Even if it's like the 3 miles or, running a 5K, or just walk around the block. And it's the same thing in business. Like anything in your life, you can break it down into palatable chunks that are far easier to accomplish.
What's going on, everyone? I'm here with my good buddy, Gabe Callaway of Boss Exteriors out in Portland, Oregon. And Gabe's someone I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the past about year, I guess, and be able to work with as a client here at Contractor Dynamics over the past few months and hanging out in person and really getting to know one another on a personal level as well as a business level. And I wanted to have Gabe on here for a specific reason. Gabe, one of his goals for 2023, we're recording this right now at the beginning of the year. One of his goals this year is to complete a 200-mile running race event, which I thought was pretty amazing. He's done a few 100-mile races, ultra marathons, and events like that. And I thought, man, there's a lot of parallels that I think that could be drawn between training and completing something like that and just having that as part of your everyday lifestyle and growing a business, because it is a marathon. And I thought that would be kind of fun to explore some of that, some of Gabe's lessons learned over the past couple of years of his roofing and exterior renovation company. And I think he's a really smart guy. So I think we'll be in for some good lessons here, take some notes. And with that being said, what's going on, my man?
Hey, how's it going? Happy to be here.
All right. A man of few words. So yeah, Gabe, we'll get into the running. Let's just paint a picture for the audience of who you are. If you want to get into personal, the business snapshot, however much you want to get into, let us know who you are.
Yeah, so I own Boss Exteriors. We've been in business since 2019 and built a pretty cool team and got a lot of good people here. Had some pretty explosive growth, a lot of lessons in that growth, but we moved into a new office about a year ago after kind of mid growth cycle. And I just back up about 10 years. I started out on my own doing remodels in 2010. Kind of self-taught. YouTube wasn't really a big thing yet. So I was like, I had a bunch of uncles that I could call about how to do stuff. And anyways, did that for 2 or 3 years before I really kind of had some good experience, had some additions that I did, and really did pretty much everything myself. Then started into flips, started getting into bigger projects, bigger dollars, and cutting my teeth, if you will, and got a lot of really good experience in 8 to 10 years of doing that stuff. Ended up moving a little ways away to help start a church in Portland and back near my home of Canby, Oregon. That's where I grew up, and still remodeling, but I was kind of burnt out on it. It wasn't exciting for me anymore, and the Portland market was a little different. It wasn't as fun anymore, and so I was looking at what to do, and I'd kind of always dreamed of niching down into something that I could grow. I had a really hard time growing the remodeling business. We've kind of always had a little bit of a labor shortage, and I was definitely, I'm not a victim of that, but it was hard to find people for a long time, and so I thought niching down it would be easier to get some good people and train people in specific work. And so basically I proposed an idea to my dad and brother, who I was already kind of doing some flips and some real estate stuff with, and we decided to go for it. And so I shut down my construction company and started Boss. And I think we technically started in 2018, but it took a while to kind of get the wheels moving. Made our first hire in August of 2019, and we've been rocking and rolling ever since. So that's kind of the backstory of how Boss came to be. It was really let's niche down and see if we can build something cool.
All right, I get it. Remodeling, hard to scale, kind of burnt out on that. Are you and your brother and your dad, are you the owners of the company now, or is it just you? Or
Yeah, we all three of us own part of the company. Yeah, so we're partners, but they don't really have a lot to do inside the business. I mostly go to them when there's big problems that I just need some outside input on. So
Okay, so you're running the business, so you are the boss of
yeah,
Boss Exteriors. That's cool. And you guys focus on roofing. You do some other things now as well, right?
yeah. So we do roofing, siding, gutters, windows, and paint, and then we also have a carpentry division that does kind of like miscellaneous framing and we'll replace beams under houses and stuff like that. We got a lot of trees out here, and so trees fall down, and that's a niche in itself because you can get a tree guy and you can get like a new construction framer, but you can't get somebody to come reframe where the tree fell. And so we've kind of found this weird spot where nobody really wants to touch it, and we're like, yeah, I don't. It's kind of fun actually. It's all like remodel work, but it's kind of a big puzzle for the guys. So
Okay, that's cool. So you mentioned you wanted to niche down, and that was roofing, and now you're sounds like branching out a little bit more beyond that. How has that because that just adds different services, different SOPs, different financials to the business. How has that affected your business? Has that made it more difficult or better, more
yeah,
profitable?
right. Yeah, it's been a challenge for sure. It's not so Boss Exteriors was originally Boss Roofing, and then I kept getting so many phone calls for stuff that wasn't just roofing, and had a hard time saying no to it, and it became a service to our customers. And as far as the revenue goes, most of our revenue is roofing, a large majority of it, like 70% is roofing. So we do a lot of siding as well, but it's mainly roofing.
Okay, gotcha. And so you've had some explosive growth over the past 3 years, not 3 years ish, I guess.
Yep.
What was why did that happen? How were you able to grow a new business so quickly?
Yeah, the a couple of things. I think anybody that was in business and kind of survived the first couple waves of the COVID shutdowns saw some kind of growth if you could kind of stick it out through the first shutdowns, and so I attribute some of it to that. But we positioned ourselves in a way that it was kind of like filling a vacuum a little bit. We were providing a service that people weren't getting elsewhere in our industry. And so that's the part I actually attribute to the people. My first hire was we turned out to be good buddies, but he was my brother's friend and just a stand up dude. One of those guys that walks in the room and you can trust him. He was an animal. He sold a lot of work. He worked really hard. He kept up with me and then eventually outworked me, which is I was impressed, and I had to actually tell him to slow down and go home like week after week because he's a hard worker, and then we got other people like that too that were just committed to getting the job done, whatever it was. And so I attribute our growth to the people for sure because I didn't do it all by myself. I kind of had the vision and I had the structure built in my head about of what it would look like. But we had some really good people starting out that they were okay with putting in the hours for sure. And the core values of those people, we were we're still a young business, but we didn't have established core values at the time. But they aligned. All the people I brought on at the beginning, we all aligned. So
Yeah, that's key for us too. And it's something that people say like, oh, core values and alignment. And to me, I always like read about that or heard about that. And I was like, yeah, that's like big corporate talk. And like we're not there. We're just a small company. We don't need that. And then like it was only about a year ago that we really started embracing that. And it really does make a huge difference. Trying to hire people right now and just, the people that we're attracting, like our first interview is straight up, hey, here's what the role is about. What do you want to do? Tell us about yourself. And then just, trying to ask some questions and talk about values and different things like that to see if there's an alignment. And then we'll go to skills interview because, we don't care about skills or anything unless the value alignment is there. So
Yep.
that's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, so good people, good value alignment, able to grow pretty quickly. So before we hit record, you're talking about some of the challenges in that growth that, maybe some lessons that you can share with the audience of contracting company owners, leaders, sales reps that are maybe wanting to, not eliminate any mistakes, but maybe minimize some of the potential pitfalls of growing a business. What were some of those things for you guys over the past few years?
Yeah. Getting started and kind of hitting some revenue numbers that were really interesting, and cool. You got to know your numbers, and we didn't. And we were just selling a whole bunch of work and getting a whole bunch of work done without looking super close at the back end. Some stuff just really fell flat, and we ended up kind of giving some work away for a little while and not really knowing it, and then we were spending money on stuff that wasn't working, like on the marketing side. Shout out to Contractor Dynamics. Shameless plug for you guys. It's pretty awesome what you guys do. So you guys have helped us change a whole bunch of stuff in the last few months and turn that around. But the lessons from it is like, even if things are going right, you still got to be looking at the numbers to know why it's going right, and then also to recognize when things turn sideways. You got to make some changes sooner than later. Knowing your numbers is a big one, and the accounting side, like gross profit side, all that stuff is your overhead and all that stuff, super important. We've been digging into that a whole bunch the last 6 months. So,
what made you start digging into that? Did something happen, or?
When you're operating on thin margins and you have like a down month, well, cash flow dries up in the middle of a busy season, and you're like, well, where's the money? And then it's like the light bulb goes off. Oh my gosh, this is important. I think we got to start digging into this stuff. And thankfully, we started digging in at a time when we were able to basically turn around the profitability on jobs and looking at the overhead and the whole picture. And that's kind of when the red flags went off. It was really in September. We had a little bit of a lull in work. We'd finished some big jobs, and it was like, this shouldn't be happening right now. We gotta look at this. So I've got a good management team too. Kudos to them. Like I couldn't do this without them. I've got a good sales manager, office manager, and then my general manager he's really engineer minded. Like really wants to break stuff down and put it all in a spreadsheet and make it fit. And so without them, I wouldn't be where we are today. So
that's awesome, man. True leader. Yeah, I've been through that and still learning some of that as well. It's like when times are good and sales are coming in, like sales can hide a lot of sins. Is that what they say or something like that? But, not things that you're doing, intentionally bad. You're just, they cover up a lot of things that, they get exposed when the tide goes out. So yeah, we've had those slow periods where you're like, man, what is going on? And you take a look at things. You're like, man, spending money on this, our margins aren't where they need to be here, overpaying this person, that sort of thing. So I think that's a continual thing to look at, but just like the financial literacy of knowing what numbers to look at, what numbers to track. And like I said, getting around people that can help you with that. We have an awesome leadership team and they help me with that as well. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be in a great position myself. So, as an owner, like you're just doing so many things. You might have some financial literacy, but you're doing so many things, juggling so many balls that you lose track of things. And that's what it just happens,
Yep.
So you realize that some things were not how they should have been. What did you do? I heard you talk earlier about like this master spreadsheet you put together. What did you do to say, all right, like this can't happen again, right? We're in this position. I'm the leader. I'm the boss. This is not going to happen under my watch. Like, how did you turn that around?
Yeah, you come up with a plan. You start with the end in mind. I don't know. I think it's Stephen Covey that says that one. That's kind of his deal. start with the end in mind. And we operate on EOS, and EOS has some tools that you can use basically to track backwards from the finish line. So start with the end in mind, write that goal down, and backtrack all the way to where you're at today. And just be really intentional about the steps that you want to take. And so we've looked at what we call our cost of sale, and basically come up with a metric to try and get everybody aligned on in the company. And so that's one of the big aspects that everybody kind of has an input to. And then the other side of it is that as a executive leadership team, we're having to look at all the other costs that make up the business and basically make sure that they all make sense and that we need all of them. And if we don't, then, well, we're the leadership team, so we get to drive those numbers and make better decisions on that side.
All right,
so
cool.
You gotta start with the end in mind and make a solid plan.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And you have your weekly L10 meetings with under EOS to make sure that you're keeping track of the scorecard and all that.
Yeah, for sure. The level 10 meeting is critical. My general manager, he's on vacation right now, and it always is a big bummer when one of us is gone. The meeting is never like quite as powerful when one of us is missing. And I feel it every time one of us is missing. I'm like, man, I really want his input because we're a team. It's not like I'm sitting at the helm making all these decisions, and that's a bad way to roll.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be on vacation next week, and ours L10 meetings are on Mondays. And I just sent Benny and Elizabeth a message. I was like, "Hey, you guys handle it without me." Like, I was so tempted to be like, "Oh yeah, I'll zoom in from vacation. I'll be on the L10s. It's so important." But like, I was like, "No, you need to take a little bit of a break, and they can handle it. And just let me know if there's anything that needs my input so I'm not holding anyone back, but yeah, it's fun. It's productive. You just feel like it's not a feeling like you are moving the business forward every single week, like without a doubt. Like it's been a game changer for us. So anyone listening, watching who has not heard about EOS worldwide, it's the operating system that is outlined in the book Traction, which most people have heard of by now. Really powerful stuff. It's not something that you implement overnight. We started implementing it last year, and we're still, kind of getting the hang of it now and still improving and growing with it. But yeah, it holds people accountable. It's a good structure. It's a great system.
Yeah, what I like about it is the greatest athletes of all time, they all execute on the basics every day. And EOS, it's not a super complex system. It has some tools that you can use that are complex, but it's not complex. It's the basics. And it asks kind of basic questions that lead you as a unit down the right path. They can be complicated problems, but the structure doesn't have to be complicated.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah, for sure. Speaking, who was it? Was it Vince Lombardi, the football coach, who they would win the Super Bowl, and then the first day of training camp that next season, he would show up, and I don't have a ball in my hand, but he would be like, "This is a football." And they would start with the basics and not assume anything and just like start from page one.
Yeah.
And I think it was John Wooden, the basketball coach, legendary basketball coach, would teach the players like how to tie their shoes. Like, you're not too good for the fundamentals. So yeah. So that's a good transition into or introduction into like the running aspect of things. So there might be people out there that are, have never run before, or like the thought of running like a mile scares them. And maybe they could not even run a mile. Maybe it's walking a mile, and you're out there running 100-mile races, events. I guess they're not races because you're not really racing to win. I don't think. It's more about completing it. But you've got a 200-miler in your sights this year. Talk about that. Like, tell us what that's like, first of all, like business aside, like, what's it like to run 100 miles, like straight, like not, over the course of a month, like in a weekend?
Yeah, it's a trip. It's definitely a journey. I would say, man, it is one of the most challenging things I've ever done. You've got a lot of factors that come into play. You've got your nutrition and hydration and the weather and your mental headspace, and then the other elements like people and just a lot of kind of stuff that's out of your control, and getting into a headspace of basically, I like to say, keep your side of the fence clean, keeping your own mind in a good place, and staying on top of the stuff that you can control. So that being said, the stuff that I can control is my training plan and my scheduling and my nutrition and my stretching routines and my core workouts, that type of stuff. But 100 miles is a long ways. I've actually only done 100 miles once. I've gotten, I've got a few 50 milers, 100K, 75 or 74 miles at another race. And the next natural step is just a 200. So
yeah. Yeah. That's just that, for sure.
Yeah.
Why not? Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, you were talking about all those things like controlling what you can control, following your plan and all that, like that you could have been talking about business just as well as you're talking about running. And that's why I think there's a great parallel there. I've never run, my longest run is 30 miles. So, but it's not, and we talked about this before hitting record, like it's not so much like the actual race day. It's more what's more impressive is like the training that goes into being able to run 100 miles, right? Like you're obviously not, unless I think you mentioned your brother, like you're not waking up on a Friday morning and being like, yeah, I'm going to go do 100 today. Like you've got to have a plan, right?
Yeah. So I've actually been talking to several people just that reach out to me because they know I run, about want to do a marathon or something. And, I don't discourage them from that at all. I think it's a great goal, but you gotta build up to that. It takes a long time to get your even just physiologically, you got to get your joints and your muscles all used to some higher mileage so that you're not getting injured, doing things, basically overextending yourself and hurting yourself. And that's business too. The system has to support the output. And I mean, talk about a parallel. That's it. The system has to support the output.
I'm writing that down. I love that. That's so common. You see, especially in the roofing industry where it tends to be, a more scalable business, say, than remodeling, for example. And you see, you talk, especially now it's January, right? You're talking to owners about goals, and like doubling is just kind of like the norm,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, we did 4 million last year. Our goal is 8 this year. Like, I don't know how many times this week I've heard that.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in that camp too. We're looking to at least double this year. So I'm not pointing fingers. It's just like there's a lot that goes into that. And like when I told my business coach our goal for this year, he actually advised on revising it downward. He's like, dude, like you might be able to hit that, but there's going to be a decent amount of collateral damage in the meantime. Like everything has to go perfectly well. Like all of your hires have to be the right hires the first time. Like, the marketing has to go well. Like the market itself has to be right. Like everything has to go well in order for you to hit that massive target you set. So he actually advised me on bringing it back a little bit, which we did just a little bit, but you're so right. Like in business, it's like doubling is crazy. Even growing 20%, like that's a very solid, that's a very solid growth. Like if you're growing by even 10% year over year and compounding that, like that's awesome. Well, I don't know about inflation these days. Maybe you need more than that, but 20% would be, that's very commendable. And like, that's how you don't get injured, AKA in business. Like that's how you don't screw up and provide a crappy service to your clients and get bad reviews and tarnish your brand and reputation and all that. So you got to build up to it. Huh? So how long does it take to train? I mean, you're not starting from scratch. You have a baseline fitness, but like, what's the training process like for 100 or a 200-mile run?
100 is probably a little easier to talk about as far as a training plan. 200s, there's no perfect training for a 200. It's actually kind of a new distance as of like 5 or 6 years ago. They didn't really exist before that. There might have been a few, but they've really kind of gained steam over the last 5-6 years. as far as like training, typically you'll see like a 6 month training plan for a 100 miler. And then a lot of people, including myself, I like to throw a couple shorter distances into the training plan. So this year I have a 100K in April. That's 62 miles, and then my 200 miler is in June. So I'll peak once, and then I'll kind of lower mileage for a couple of weeks, and then peak again before June. And I don't like the peak mileage race to be 3 weeks out from the actual race. So as far as the schedule goes, I mean, you could be, depending on your level of fitness, like I'll probably hit 80 miles at 80 to 85 miles a week at my peak training volume. And then the lower side would be 50 to 60, somewhere in there every week, 6 days a week. So it's a lot of time. You add up the hours just running. I was just telling one of my buddies, you're looking at like 10 to 12 hours of running itself every week. And then you hit that 80 miles and you're like closer to 15 or 18 hours of just running in a week.
And that's not including like hopefully stretching, things like that, right?
Yeah, I still do. I try to do 30 to 45 minutes of core workout 3 or 4 days a week. And that upper body and stuff thrown in there too. And then, yeah, stretching. Stretching is a big deal. So most runners don't really like stretching that much, but it's pretty important.
Yeah. The older you get, for sure.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, one of the challenges that business owners have, and myself, not immune, is priority management, right? Like how to manage the time that you're given and get everything done. So you're doing like all these hours running every week. You've got a family, you've got multiple businesses, you're involved in your church and things like that. Like how do you approach all that? Like, do you plan out that on like a monthly basis? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a really awesome wife. I'll just start with that.
Smart man.
Shout out to my wife. None of this would happen without her. She's super understanding and supportive of my goals, even if they're wild, like 200 miles. So but with the caveat that like I try to take as little time away from the business and my family as possible. So my running schedule, when I start hitting the training pretty hard, it's either super early mornings or super late nights, and I choose mornings most of the time because it works out better, and it's a great way to start the day with an hour of running. So
okay, so you're sacrificing a little bit of sleep, but I'm sure sleep is important in order to rest and recover and all that, right?
Yeah, sleep's big. That's actually one of my big focuses this year. Has been like last year I didn't do a very good job getting enough sleep when I was hitting the training regiment pretty hard. And so I just get, going to bed is discipline. Like going to bed at the right time, that requires discipline. And I wasn't doing that. I was disciplined enough to get out of bed in the morning to go for my run, but I wasn't doing the right thing for my body by getting to bed 30 or 45 minutes earlier to be able to make that happen. So it's as far as the rest of the schedule goes, taken away from the business or being involved in church and stuff, it's all got to fit. It's all part of the goals. Like, we have a small group at our house every Tuesday night, and there's always like mayhem just getting ready for that. And then we got kids activities, piano, karate, like all that stuff, and it's all got to fit, and that requires a pretty high level of communication for my wife and I. And sometimes we miss the mark, but it works. We've made it work. And as far as the business side goes, man, I have a really awesome leadership team. That's all I got to say. And my general manager, he's also a runner. He does ultras. He's actually done way more than me. He's been running for several years longer. And so he gets it. He's an early morning runner and Saturday morning long run type guy. And so he understands that side, and we cover for each other when we need it. But it all fits in. So
that's cool. It is possible, right? For anyone like watching or listening and It's January again, and as you know, Gabe, we've been having our client group calls this week and going through and just kind of sharing some goals and targets for initiatives, really for the new year. And for a lot of guys and girls, it's been, hey, I want to lose weight, I want to get fit, I want to start working out. And I think that so many business owners have this perception of like, if it's one or the other. Like I'm going to go balls to the wall and just work all the time and just forget about my health for a while, and and then I'll catch up and get healthy at some point, right? But then there's people like you who are making it all work, and I'm not running those distances and running 15 hours a week by any means, but I'm making it all work too. And I've been through those periods of back in the day, like when I first started my business, I would be like, all right, well, I need to grind for the next couple months. Like I'm just not going to work out as much and I'll catch up later. And what I found personally is that sucked. Like I just didn't have the energy that I wanted for work, for my family, for anything. Right. So I've learned over time that I need to get that workout in the morning, get the energy flowing, and just, get that win early morning in order to be able to pour into my team and family and all that. So I just kind of want to underscore like people out there like, oh, well, you don't understand my situation. I'm busy and like I got this going on. Like, no, Gabe has a ton going on as well and still making it happen. So it is possible.
Yeah, you try to hit all the pillars of health, physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, they all matter, and they can all fit in 24 hours. And there is a season where it's important to grind away on the business or whatever. But I think I actually might have heard this from you a few months ago about focus. Like there's more than enough time. It's really about your focus. Like how focused can you be on something for 2 hours a day, and then get that task done and move on to the next. And so that's been one of my big struggles, but also I'm not really a resolution guy. It's just kind of a mind shift for me. Like I'm going to get better at this year because I can't afford not to. I did some things wrong last year or not as focused. And so focusing on our marketing this year, focusing on how I spend my time during the day. I mean, there's so many distractions between social media, shiny things, like all the events going on. It's easy to lose focus on the little steps. Back to the training part, like little steps every day are what make the big difference. And if you focus on those, then you'll end up having a pretty good net result.
Yeah, I guess start with the end in mind. That's the race day, the event day, and then work backwards from there. And yeah, focus, man, it's hard. Like I go through phases. This week has been not my best week of focus. I think because I'm going on vacation, I have like, a million things I want to try to get done before. And I found myself like this morning, I'm hopping around from thing to thing, and I've got all these tabs open in my browser. Like I'm, on this screen, I'm like booking a flight to Denver, and then on this thing, I'm like, doing some projections, and I caught myself like that's, at least having the awareness. I'm like, dude, this is crazy. Like, so I shut everything down. I put my phone in the other room. I got back to my focus and, started like single tasking again. But if we're not aware, like that becomes the default. And then like, yeah, at night, I mean, I try to I go to bed early. Like I try to be in bed by 9:30 PM and I can do that. And then the nights that I don't, it's usually because I'm not being efficient. Like, I'm working too late, and then we have dinner late as a family. And then maybe I'm trying to sneak in some work after dinner. And it's just like, I don't need to do that. Like that's inefficiency. So we think we're busy, but we can always be more efficient. We can always be more focused. Maybe it's a whole other conversation, but maybe it's a matter of delegating, hiring people to help out, which is what I need to do right now. But yeah, I'm kind of going on a tangent there, but focus is huge and it can all fit in, right? It's like if someone's doing it, like if Gabe's doing it, or if, whoever else you look up to is doing it, like it's possible, another human being is doing it. You just need to figure out how to do it. What motivates you to push yourself, Gabe? Like business or running, whatever.
That saying, it doesn't get easier, but you can get stronger, comes to mind. I mean, I have 3 daughters. I am been married for 12 and a half years, and it doesn't get easier, but we get better. And I think I like to keep things pretty simple. And so that's really what it's all about. Like I used to think like, oh my gosh. So 3.5 years ago, I signed up for a half marathon and started training for it and was like, I don't know if that's actually going to push me in the way that I want to be pushed. And so I canceled that, signed up for a marathon, a really hard one. It was a trail marathon, and started training for it. And was like, okay, I clicked off the half marathon like 4 weeks into training and did pretty good, for a super new runner. And it's just been basically the same progress the same mindset and progress ever since. Like, now I look at a half marathon and that's like a really, really short, long training run for me. Like on the weekend, that's not really a long run. That's like, oh, okay, I got, I'm to the point in some of my training where that's like a midweek run, 12 to 13 miles. And so it's the same thing with other things in life, like routine. Like the harder you work on your routine and your focus, and the better you get at dialing it in and being consistent with it and communicating with your loved ones and just being hyper focused and efficient with your time, like we were talking about, the easier it gets over time because you're just getting better and better at it. So, but as far as what motivates me, man, I'm a little bit lazy, and that's like I want the strength basically to not have to be so hard. Like I don't have to put out so much work to do the tasks that normally would be kind of hard, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I got it.
yeah, a little bit of a trip, but I don't know. I like for the hard things to be easy. So
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that running these long distances and training like you do makes things easier, like family life or business or other things?
yeah, totally. It's like a kind of a secret weapon of sorts. Like when I start my day in the morning and I have like a hard day or a hard meeting at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning with a vendor or a client or even with my management team, we got some hard stuff going on. And I show up and I've already run like 7 to 10 miles. Dude, like I got the hardest part of my day done already. And
Yeah,
everything else from there gets pretty easy. Like I pushed my mind because I had to run in the dark and in the rain and in the cold most of the time where I live. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
showing up to work and having the hard part done, it changes your whole day. And that stuff
yeah.
compounds.
For sure, absolutely. Yeah, there's an entrepreneur. I forget who it is to give credit, but he talks about like making today's ceiling tomorrow's floor, right? So
Exactly.
going back to that like marathon, like for you, like that first marathon was the ceiling. That was like, wow, I got to get there. And now that's kind of the floor. That's like kind of the minimum probably race that you would sign up for, if even that. So being able to train like that, and even being in business, getting better at business, like you're continually, your floor this or your ceiling this year becomes your floor for the next year, and hopefully you never dip below that. You just continue to raise the bar.
Yeah.
So I like that analogy for sure. And you only get there by doing hard things and like, having those difficult meetings or having difficult conversations or going through challenges, maybe going through tough times in business. And it can be so hard to like, as you're going through those challenges in business to see like the reason why you're going through them is to make you stronger and smarter
Yeah.
and maybe, give you the tools to help others as well. But it's so true. Even the ability to like make decisions on things like in business, like running a business, you're making, we don't even realize just making decisions all day, big, small, whatever. And then something will come up like maybe in the household and my wife will be like, "Oh, what are we going to do?" And not to minimize that at all, but I'll be like, "Oh, it's no big deal. Like, just it's another problem to solve. Like we'll figure it out, like
Yeah.
it's just natural.
Yeah.
You have that muscle of being able to just to overcome things.
Yeah. In general, society, just where we're at as a culture and, the ability of technology to kind of make things easier for us. That was also a draw for me is like, I just kind of have an easy life and we've got all of our creature comforts. I don't have to like worry about where I'm sleeping or where my next meal is, like none of that stuff. And so just adding some hard things in my life, like you can't go wrong with that. And I think it actually is a requirement these days to like kind of do that, because we can get inside our own heads and end up, not to minimize this at all, but battling like depression and anxiety instead of like pushing in the other direction. Like I'm going to strengthen my mind by adding difficulty into my life voluntarily and exposing to myself to that on a daily basis, so that I don't have to deal with that stuff. I'm not a depression and anxiety expert or anything like that, but there's a lot to be said for going on a run.
Yeah. My wife is on me all the time, like, you shouldn't run, like walking's just as good, that sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the mental part of it for me mostly at this point. Like it's just I need it, but that's true. I mean, it's such a good point. Like we do have relatively easy lives if you look at, the average person in this world, and you've got to intentionally seek out challenging things. I agree. So that's a great way to put it. So you got your 200 miler coming up this year. What else are you excited about this year? What's new and exciting? Maybe business, family, anything else?
Yeah. I've got some traveling coming up this year, but I'm excited to see my business continue to stabilize. We spent the second half of last year kind of what I call righting the ship, getting some structure under it. And a new business, it used to be said that new businesses couldn't become profitable for 5 years. That was like something that everybody said when I started my last business. And it was true then. I don't know if it's necessarily true now. There's a lot of stuff happening with technology and things like that just, you can do things a lot faster. But this year, I'm pretty excited to see the stabilization and some really crucial systems be implemented into the business, and really for me to have less involvement because of those things. They'll all be kind of running on their own in a lot of ways. So
love it. Thanks to the team for that. And then you mentioned something about a podcast the other day. What's that all about?
Yeah, we haven't, it's kind of a baby thought. We've talked about it a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my wife and I, we've been talking about it for like a year, and it's kind of coming to a head. Like, we either need to like stop talking about this or just make it happen. But then I'm not a bandwagon guy. It seems like everybody has a podcast, and I'm not into jumping on the bandwagon. But I think that the experiences that my wife and I have, it would be silly not to, just to share our experiences, because if it helps one person, it'll be worth it. And I think we'd be doing ourselves a disservice to not share our story and how we deal with stuff, man. Like, marriage is hard, and I think that it doesn't get talked about enough, and it doesn't get taken seriously a lot of times. And so that would be a big focus is marriage, and just kind of breaking through some of the stuff that culture has kind of built around marriage, and getting people to take it seriously, and talking about some of the things that come up that are like really hard, and pushing. I mean, you want to talk about challenges like that people don't talk about? Marriage, man. Like, there is so much stuff that happens behind closed doors that people don't talk about, and we just want to help with that. And that would be a big focus. It wouldn't all be about marriage, but living life, running businesses. She works in the business. She's also a musician. She's got an album on Spotify. She's trying to put her second one together this year. And so there's a lot going on.
I would just listen in to hear how you guys get all this stuff done, man. That is amazing. And it's hard. It's a new thing. It's, you got to you'll have to figure some things out, and, just work through it. It's another challenge. So I think you'll enjoy it. And you and I had some good conversations out in Utah last month, and like, you're a very thoughtful, introspective guy. So I think that, you should definitely do it.
We'll see, man. Time will tell.
All right. Well, stay tuned for that. So we'll wrap it up here. I want to be cognizant of your time and all that, but do you have a couple minutes to stick around for a quick lightning round of fun questions to round this out?
Let's do it.
All right. Before I get to that, by the way, anything else you want to add based on our conversation? Anything else you feel like you wanted to say, but we didn't get a chance to cover?
I would say to anybody out there, if there's something that you think is too hard for you to do, you got to do it in bite-sized chunks. Even if it's like the 3 miles or, running a 5K, well, just walk around the block. And it's the same thing in business. Like anything in your life, you can break it down into palatable chunks that are far easier to accomplish. So that's kind of how I sum up a lot of stuff. One of my kind of unique abilities is to take something that's really complex and basically break it down into not so complex steps that are easy to bite off. So
I like that. I like that. Yeah, when I get overwhelmed, my wife is kind of my coach on this. When I get overwhelmed with life and all I have to do, and she said this morning, she's like, just one thing at a time, one thing at a time. And that just kind of brings me back to like, okay, one foot in front of the other.
I actually heard
and I've heard that, like, what's that?
I heard a quote. It was actually a post-game interview with Allen Iverson. He was talking about, I don't remember exactly what the context was, but he was basically saying, like, I'm not any different than anybody else in this room. I just took different steps. I took more steps. I broke it down to my daily workouts, to my daily routines to get better at what I wanted to get better at. And here I am, the MVP of the NBA, so got to break it down.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll have to look that up. I've heard a couple of Navy SEALs talk about that when they went through SEAL training in Hell Week. Chad Wright is one of them, and he talks about like the guys that didn't make it, that had to go ring the bell and tap out of Hell Week, were the guys that like were looking at the whole week and they couldn't comprehend like getting through that week. And he's like, I focused on some of the guys, like literally the 10 feet in front of me, like let's get to that next, rock on the beach or whatever it is. And like that, just 10 feet at a time, and just focus on that. I've heard a few Navy SEALs talk about it in like the same exact way. So yeah,
not to drag this on, but speaking of 100-milers, man, like it's inevitably going to come to that point during a race. Like I just got to make it to that tree. Like I feel like garbage right now, but if I make it to that tree, then I'll be okay. And then you get to the tree, and then you got to make it to the next tree, but you can't focus on the next tree. You got to focus on the one that you're trying to get to and make the next move. It's genius.
Man, that's great. That brings it full circle. That's perfect. Yeah. Love it. All right, let's get into a little bit of the lightning round. Things I'm curious about, and I think bring a little bit of a colorful aspect to the content here. Current book that you're reading.
Right now I'm reading, almost done with it, Living Fearless by Jamie Winship. It's a good book, and talks a lot about identity. Dude's got some wild stories. CIA dude that, I don't remember the exact number, but it was like hundreds of undercover missions that never got violent, never wow. Any combat. And he had some failures. He admits he has some failures, and he says some people died, which, he's in CIA, but it's about identity and really crazy stuff. He would like basically help terrorists see their true identity, and they basically would just stop being terrorists. Pretty crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, really crazy stuff. And then I read, right now I'm reading 3 chapters a day of the New Testament in the Good Book. So those are my 2 morning reads.
Love it. Awesome. I'll have to look that book up, Living Fearless. What is your morning routine? Speaking of your morning reads.
Yeah, I have 2 different morning routines. I have my full training routine where I'm up at 3:20 in the morning and I'm running by 4 o'clock and usually done by 5:15, and then I start my shower, reading, coffee, that stuff. But when I don't do that, I get up at 5 and end up reading for a while. My wife and I might talk, and then I'll jump straight into work. So,
okay, you're so lazy, sleeping until 5, man. Come on.
Oh man.
What's your? So you mentioned some travels this year. What's your next, or maybe your most exciting travel destination for this year?
So every year, my family. So I have 5 brothers and 1 sister. And so there's 7 of us, and we all meet up every January, end of January, to do like a family, like a destination family Christmas. So the end of this month, we're all going to Scottsdale. And so we rent a big house. My dad rents a big house, and we all stay there together with all of our kids every year. So it's a good trip. It's always exhausting, but all of us get together.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, one of those where you need a vacation after the vacation, right?
100%.
All right, so I usually ask this question. You might have this might already be answered, but what are you doing on a free Saturday? No work, the chores are done. What are you doing?
I'd probably go for a run in the morning. I might even sleep in and then go for a run. But okay. After that, we haven't done it in a little while, but I really like taking my kids on hikes, and they love it. I mean, I get to share a little bit of what I do, because most of what I do is trail running. And so getting them out on some of the trails that I've been on is a cool experience to share with them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. And finally, if people want to connect with you or, follow you or whatever, how can they get in touch with you? Or if you don't want people getting in touch with you, that's cool too.
Oh, yeah. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Gabe Callaway on Facebook, The Gabe Callaway on Instagram. If you want a morning minute every day of the week, just follow along on Facebook and you will get a morning quip. It's wisdom. It's funnies. It's the weather where I'm at, so it might not apply to you, but it's still fun for me to do. So,
yeah, I was going to bring that up. Those are great. I guess you probably do that the morning of, like you don't write those ahead of time, do you?
I tried to write them the night before, and it just wasn't the same. I did it for like a week and was like, it doesn't have the same firepower when it's not in the moment.
Yeah, especially when you're tying it into the weather, right? It's got to be like, I feel like it's always kind of relevant to that. So yeah, and then people like yell at you when you skip a couple days, right?
Dude, I have gotten some nasty messages from some of the people out there that are like, you better bring that back because I don't know what to do with my day.
Oh, that's great. All right, I enjoy it. So thanks for making the effort. Hey, consistency, right?
Yeah, man.
Thanks so much for sharing, man. This has been fun. I'm glad we're able to make the time to do it. So I appreciate you and look forward to getting this out to our audience.
Appreciate it, man.